Do you know that moment when someone asks, "How are you?" and you feel a knot in your throat? Not because you're sad, but because you know the real answer, who you truly are, what you really think, what your heart carries, would be too much. It would be inconvenient. It would expose a part of you that you learned to keep locked away. So you smile, you say you're fine, and you move forward carrying this strange weight of existing only halfway. The shame of being who you are didn't arrive with one big traumatic event. It settled in gradually, in small moments you might not even fully remember. It was that time you spoke your mind, and an awkward silence filled the room. It was when you showed too much enthusiasm about something, and someone rolled their eyes. It was when you cried, and they told you that you were too sensitive. It was when you laughed too loud, dreamed too big, felt too deeply, and you learned. You learned to turn down the volume of your existence. You learned to edit your sentences before speaking. You learned to check if your laughter was at an acceptable level, if your opinions were palatable, if your presence didn't take up too much space. You became an expert at being a digestible version of yourself. But there's a cost to this that nobody told you about. This cost doesn't appear all at once. It accumulates silently, like dust covering a mirror. Until one day, you look at your own life and realize you don't recognize yourself anymore. The choices you made, the relationships you cultivated, the work you do, even the way you dress, all of it was calibrated to not cause discomfort to others, to not reveal too much of who you really are. And you're tired. Tired of rehearsing conversations in your head. Tired of feeling that tightness in your stomach before expressing an opinion. Tired of coming home after a whole day of performing and feeling that you left the best part of yourself locked in some internal room to which you yourself have lost the key. The practice you're about to discover isn't about adding one more thing to your endless to-do list. It's not about waking up at 5 in the morning to become a more productive and impressive version of yourself. It's about something much more radical and, paradoxically, much simpler. It's about stopping. Stopping running from yourself in the first hour of the day. Stopping reaching for your phone to immediately fill the silence with other people's voices, opinions, and lives. Stopping beginning your day already measuring yourself against impossible standards of who you should be. Because the uncomfortable truth is this: you've spent your entire life trying to fix something that was never broken. That part of you that you hide, the sensitive one, the intense one, the different one, the one who thinks differently, feels differently, sees the world through different eyes, isn't a manufacturing defect. It's your signature of authenticity. It's what makes you be you and not a faded copy of all the expectations placed on your shoulders. And every morning, in the first moments of consciousness, there exists a gap, a crack in time where you haven't yet activated all your defense mechanisms, where you haven't yet put on your armor, where you're still malleable, permeable, real. It's in that vulnerable and powerful moment that reprogramming happens. The affirmation that changes everything. I want you to take a deep breath with me now. And as you breathe, allow these words to enter not just your mind, but your entire body. I am worthy of existing exactly as I am. Say it again, out loud if you can. I am worthy of existing exactly as I am. Did you feel something? Perhaps resistance, perhaps an emotion rising, perhaps that internal voice whispering, but you're not perfect, but you made mistakes, but you still have so much to fix. My dear, that voice is not your truth. It's just the echo of all the times you were told you needed to be different, to be lovable. The truth is this: you don't need to fix yourself to deserve love. You don't need to transform into someone different to have permission to exist fully. The very essence of who you are, with your peculiarities, your intensities, your softness, your edges, is exactly what this world needs. Because here's something few people tell you. Your thoughts don't just reflect your reality. They create it. The way you speak to yourself in the first hours of the day is literally programming how you're going to experience everything that comes after. If you wake up and the first internal conversation is about everything that's wrong with you, everything you need to hide, everything you should be but aren't, you're programming your nervous system to live in a state of constant inadequacy. But what if you did something different? What if, before anything else, you gave yourself a few minutes of something most people never experience? Total presence with yourself, without judgment, without agenda, without needing to be or do anything other than just being there. This isn't meditation in the sense you might know it. It doesn't require perfect posture, an empty mind, or some mystical enlightenment. It's more like meeting an old friend you've neglected for years and simply sitting beside them in silence, acknowledging that they exist, that they matter, that they deserve your attention. That old friend is you, the real version, the unedited one. And when you start doing this daily, when you make this your first conscious choice of the day, something extraordinary and quiet begins to happen. The shame, that sticky feeling that there's something fundamentally wrong with being who you are, starts to lose its power. Not because you're convincing yourself you're wonderful through forced positive affirmations, but because you are, perhaps for the first time, truly getting to know yourself. And it's impossible to keep being ashamed of something you're finally seeing with clarity. So here's what I invite you to do. Not as one more obligation, but as a sacred act of self-love. As a ritual of returning home to what has always been inside you. When you wake up tomorrow, before reaching for your phone, before diving into the demands of the day, before anything, pause. Place one hand on your heart. Feel the pulse of life beneath your palm. That beating heart knows nothing about shame. It simply continues, tirelessly, pumping life through every cell of your body. It doesn't judge whether you deserve it or not. It simply loves you, unconditionally, keeping you alive, beat after beat. Take 3 deep breaths, not just moving air, but breathing with intention. Visualize that with each inhale, you're bringing golden light into you. That light fills your chest, descends to your abdomen, rises to your throat. It illuminates every corner, every space where shame tried to hide. And with each exhale, you release. You release expectations that aren't yours. You release judgments you've carried for so long. You release the need to be perfect, to be loved. Now, still with your hand on your heart, say to yourself, and it needs to be out loud because your body needs to hear your own voice affirming your truth. I am enough exactly as I am in this moment. I release the need to hide who I really am. I choose to treat myself with the same kindness I would offer someone I love. Repeat these affirmations. Feel them. Let them penetrate not just your mind, but your entire body. Because transformation doesn't happen only at the level of thought. It needs to be felt, embodied, lived. When resistance appears, and it will appear, my dear, you're going to sit in the morning, place your hand on your heart, start saying these words, and you're going to feel something pushing you back. A voice saying, "This is silly. You don't have time for this. Who do you think you are to deserve this care?" That resistance isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're doing something right. It's a sign that you're touching something real, something that's been protected for so long that now it's afraid to be seen. Imagine that resistance as a frightened child inside you, a child who learned that showing up fully was dangerous. That being vulnerable resulted in pain. That hiding was the only way to stay safe. You don't need to fight that child. You don't need to convince them they're wrong. You just need to acknowledge them with tenderness and say, "I understand why you're scared. I understand why you think we need to hide, but now I'm here to protect you, and you don't have to carry that weight alone anymore." Breathe with that resistance. Give it space, and continue, gently, returning to your practice. Returning to your hand on your heart. Returning to your affirmations of truth. Because healing doesn't happen by ignoring the frightened parts of ourselves. It happens when we finally embrace them with the compassion they always deserved. The power of conscious repetition. Your subconscious mind learns through repetition. Think about how you learned to walk, to talk, to drive. It wasn't through a single perfect attempt. It was through constant repetition until it became natural, automatic, part of who you are. The shame you feel now was also learned through repetition. It was hundreds, perhaps thousands of small moments where you absorbed the message that there was something wrong with being yourself. And this became so automatic that you don't even notice anymore when you're doing it, when you're diminishing yourself, editing yourself, hiding yourself. But just as shame was learned, it can be unlearned. Not overnight, not with a single heroic effort, but through the same force that created it, consistent repetition. That's why this morning practice is so powerful. Because every day, as soon as you wake up, you're choosing to plant a different seed. You're choosing to affirm a deeper truth about who you are. And day after day, these seeds begin to take root. They begin to grow. They begin to transform the internal garden of your consciousness. Pause for a moment and imagine this. Imagine what it would be like to wake up 30 days from now and feel, for the first time in years, a genuine sense of peace with yourself. Not because you became perfect, but because you finally stopped fighting against who you are. Imagine what it would be like to walk into a room and not spend half your energy monitoring how you're being perceived. Imagine what it would be like to speak your truth without rehearsing it 10 times in your head first. Imagine what it would be like to simply exist without apologizing for the space you occupy. This isn't fantasy, my dear. This is what begins to happen when you, consistently, choose to meet yourself every morning. When you choose to affirm your dignity before the world has a chance to tell you otherwise. And here's something profound I want to share with you. You're not doing this alone. There's a greater intelligence, an energy, a creative force, call it whatever you want, that is constantly conspiring in your favor. The universe isn't waiting for you to become perfect to support you. It's supporting you now, exactly as you are. Every breath you take is evidence of this. Every beat of your heart is a reminder that you are sustained, loved, worthy of being here. When you place your hand on your heart in the morning, you're not just doing a self-help exercise. You're connecting with that greater force. You're saying, I trust, I surrender, I allow myself to be guided back to my truth. And that force responds, not always in the way you expect, not always in the timing you'd like, but always in a way that's leading you to where you need to be. Visualize now that you're surrounded by a soft, golden light. This light doesn't come from outside. It emanates from within you. It's the light of your own essence, that part that was never touched by shame, that always knew of your dignity, that's been waiting patiently to shine fully. Every morning you practice, you're feeding that light. You're giving permission for it to grow, expand, illuminate every corner of your life. And as it grows, the darkness of shame naturally dissolves. Not because you fought against it, but because you brought light. Here's something I learned that changed everything. Gratitude isn't just a nice feeling, it's a creative force. It's a portal to miracles. And what are miracles? They're not necessarily spectacular supernatural events. Miracles are shifts in perception. They're moments where you suddenly see with new eyes, where something that seemed impossible becomes obvious, where a door you thought was closed reveals itself open. So, after your morning affirmations, after placing your hand on your heart and breathing into your own dignity, add gratitude. Find 3 things, even small ones, for which you're genuinely grateful in this moment. Maybe it's the softness of your pillow. Maybe it's the sound of birds outside. Maybe it's simply the fact that you woke up, that you have one more day, another chance to choose differently. Because when you cultivate gratitude, you're telling the universe, yes, I see the abundance, I recognize the blessings, I'm open to receiving more. And the universe responds to that openness. It always responds. Gratitude takes you out of control mode and places you in flow mode. And it's in the flow that life happens. It's in the flow that shame dissolves. It's in the flow that you finally allow yourself to be exactly who you are. Perhaps you're thinking, but what if it's too late? What if I've already carried this shame for so long that it's become part of who I am? My dear, listen to me carefully. It's never too late to come home. It's never too late to reconnect with your truth. It's never too late to choose to love yourself instead of judging yourself. You could be 50 years old living a certain way, and still, in the instant you choose differently, everything can begin to change. Because the present moment is where all power resides. Not in the past, you can't change. Not in the future, you can't control. But now, in this moment, in this breath. And perhaps you're thinking, but I tried affirmations before and it didn't work. Why would it be different now? And I tell you, Maybe it didn't work before because you were trying to convince yourself of something you didn't feel. You were repeating empty words, hoping they would magically transform your reality. But what I'm inviting you to here is different. It's not about convincing yourself. It's about recognizing yourself. It's not about creating a fantasy. It's about clearing away the layers of shame and fear to finally see what was always there, your own inherent dignity. It's about stopping trying to become someone different and starting to reveal who you always were. As you continue this morning practice, something is going to start happening naturally. You're going to begin observing yourself during the day with more clarity and less judgment. You'll notice when you're editing yourself before speaking. You'll perceive when you're shrinking to fit into a space that's too small. You'll recognize that old pattern of hiding parts of yourself. And here's what's beautiful. You don't need to judge yourself for it. You don't need to criticize yourself for still doing that. The observation itself, when done with kindness, is already transformation happening. Because when you observe yourself without judgment, you create space. And in that space, a new choice becomes possible. You can pause and ask, do I really want to hide right now? Or can I try, even just a little, to show up more truthfully? And sometimes you're going to choose to hide. And that's okay. That's not failure. That's you honoring where you are, respecting your own pace, being kind to your own journey. But other times, you're going to surprise yourself. You're going to say that thing you always held back. You're going to laugh the way you really feel. You're going to occupy the space you deserve. And in those moments, you'll remember why this morning practice is worth every second. If you want to deepen this work even further, here are some questions to reflect on. You can write about them in a journal or simply contemplate them in silence. When was the last time you felt completely yourself without editing anything? What did that feel like? What part of you is asking to be seen, but you've kept hidden? If you could speak to your 5 years ago self, what would you say about the journey to here? What would your life look like if you woke up tomorrow with no fear of being judged? Don't force answers. Just let the questions touch you. Let them do their quiet work of opening internal doors that may have been locked for a long time. So here we are, my dear. Not at the end of something, but at the beginning. The beginning of a new relationship with yourself. The beginning of a practice that may seem simple, but carries the power to transform everything. Because when you choose every morning to meet yourself with kindness and truth, something profound happens. The shame begins losing its strength. Not because you expelled it with violence, but because you brought so much light that it naturally dissolved. And you begin to realize that what you thought you needed to hide is exactly what makes you unique, valuable, necessary in this world. Your intensities, your sensitivities, your unique ways of seeing and feeling, all of this isn't a burden. It's a gift. Remember this. Authenticity isn't a destination you reach and you're done. It's a daily practice. It's an act of courage renewed every morning. It's waking up and choosing, once again, not to betray yourself. Some days will be easier. Other days, shame will try to return, will whisper its old lies, will invite you back to the false safety of hiding. And on those days, you simply return to your practice. Hand on heart, conscious breathing, affirmation of truth. I am worthy of existing exactly as I am. I release the need to be perfect to be loved. I choose to show up truthfully, even when it's scary. The universe is supporting you. Your own essence is calling you back home. And every morning is a new opportunity to answer that call. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need to be brave all the time. You just need to begin. Tomorrow morning, before anything else, place your hand on your heart. Breathe. And remember who you really are. Shame doesn't define you. It never did. You are light. You are dignity. You are love manifested in human form. And the more you remember this, the more it becomes your lived reality. Welcome back to yourself, my dear. Welcome to the beginning of something true, something beautiful, something that was always waiting for you. May you wake up tomorrow and choose to meet yourself. May you breathe into your own dignity. May you allow your authenticity to shine, not because you became perfect, but because you finally understood that you were always complete. And may every morning be a new beginning, a new yes to who you really are, a new step in the journey of coming home. You are loved, you are worthy, you are enough, exactly as you are, now and always.